Hey mama, if you're listening to this, you might be carrying a secret that feels too heavy to speak out loud. You look like you got it all together, you serve at church, maybe you even lead a Bible study. You smile when you drop off the kids, but no one sees the other side of you, the one that comes out behind closed doors. At home, you are a completely different person. You yell, you explode, you scream at your kids, sometimes in their face. You tell them to shut up. You grab them too harshly. You throw things across the room. You smack them in anger, twist their ears, spank them in rage, and immediately after, you are hit with a tidal wave of shame. You cry alone in your room and you whisper, "God, what is wrong with me?" You feel scared and disgusted by your own reactions. You're terrified that someone might find out. You wonder if your kids would be better off without you. You feel unworthy, broken, and too far gone to be redeemed. You try to fix this on your own. You listen to podcasts, parenting books, download freebies, but nothing changes. You keep falling back into the same patterns, and it feels like you are stuck in a cycle that you can't break. You don't trust yourself anymore, and if you're honest, you are afraid of who you become. But here's the truth, Mama. You are not beyond hope. You're not alone, and with God's help and the right support, you can change. I'm Elizabeth, a mom of 4 and an anger management coach for Christian moms. And inside my Calm Christian Mom coaching program, I guide women just like you through a powerful transformation. This isn't shallow behavior management. We go deep. We address your triggers, your stress, your mindset, your nervous system, and the spiritual root behind your patterns. We invite God into every layer and walk hand in hand towards healing. In just 12 weeks, you can become a completely different mom, unrecognizable. One who leads with patience, not panic. One whose children feel emotionally safe around her. One who cultivates peace. This summer, I'm offering a Calm Mama strategy session, a powerful 15-minute one-on-one coaching session designed to help you uncover the root of your anger and receive spiritual, emotional, and practical support. It's your chance to experience what coaching is like with me before diving deeper into ongoing support. If we both feel like the full program is the next right step, we can talk about what that looks like for you. You don't have to keep living like this. Your family is worth healing, and so are you. Use the link in the show notes to book the Calm Mama strategy session. Hey Mama, welcome back to another episode of Emotionally Healthy Legacy. Today I have a guest for us, and her name is DJ, and she is an early childhood specialist. And she has so many years of experience working with little ones. And I'm really excited for her to be here because we're going to be talking about kids and their behavior. And if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably listened to other episodes, and we talked about how things can be kind of triggering for us. Kids' behavior, their emotions, it can bring up things in us that are uncomfortable. And if we go deeper, there's thoughts that come up for us, which feed our behavior and our triggers. So we'll be talking a little bit about that and decoding some of the behavior, going to kind of like the root, why kids do what they do. And it helps us to see things from a different lens. So welcome, DJ. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I am actually the oldest of 7. I am the mother of 5. I am grandma to 12. And I have 20 years of experience in teaching. And mostly it's been with kindergarten, and then there's some preschool time within a school district. I'm currently doing a preschool for the Douglas County School District just outside of Denver. And we're preparing kids I have some typicals in my class, but most of the kids have some kind of learning difference or expression difference. And so my husband's also the youngest of 9. So when we put our families together, I've got 70 nieces and nephews. So I've never had a time when I haven't been around kids.
That's a lot of kids. Oh my
It
goodness.
is.
And I have a special place in my heart for these teachers who work with kids because I know that that is something that I don't think I'd be able to do. I prefer to be with adults and teach adults. It's hard for me to
Yeah.
teach kids because I feel like it goes on one ear and goes out the other. And so most of the time it seems like that way. And I prefer to have more like a mature conversation. Kids, especially my boys right now, they're in the stage where, so 10, 7, and almost 5, and it's all
Yeah.
about like farts and jokes and like everything feels so immature in my house. There's constantly like somebody's
Yeah.
burping or farting or anything, and it's like all the stuff that they hear about, like either some funny joke about diarrhea or whatever. It's like totally a
Hmm.
conversation in our house. So I
Yeah.
prefer
That potty
more.
humor is
Yes,
big, and especially with
especially for
boys.
boys.
But
Yes. Oh
yeah.
my gosh, for sure. My younger one found a song on Spotify and it talks about like poop, and it's about wiping the butt and like getting poop on their hands, and it's such a funny, hilarious song, and he just like cracks up every
Oh,
time he listens to it. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Anyways, boys, if you're a mom
boys.
of boys, you understand what this is. So
I do. Of the 7 kids in my family, I grew up with 5 of them are boys.
oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, boys. I'm like, so I have a little girl, so I'm like, I wonder if things will be different, or because she's raised with boys, she's
Hmm.
gonna just go along with all the things that they kind of say and do. So we'll see as she gets older.
Yep.
Uh, well, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to talk to you.
Thanks.
Let's talk about kids' behavior.
All
I
right.
Let's talk about almost go on the end of like misbehavior, right? We don't have a problem when they behave well. That's not anybody really, nobody really needs to
Sometimes
address
that's
that.
a thing to even look out for there.
Yeah, like to consider, like, is there something going on? Like if they, in the sense of like, if they feel that they have to obey every little
Yeah.
piece
When
because
they
they
get
feel like
overly concerned about disappointing someone or,
there's a codependency aspect of that
yeah.
probably that kicks in. Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
super people pleasing. So I want to focus more on though, like the misbehavior aspect of things, because mom of 4 and the little one, she's still like 9 months old. So that's not, not a problem yet. But as they start getting older, right, they start to
Yeah.
express their wants and needs. And I was saying something the other day in social media. I'm like, I think I would have no patience problems if my kids did what I said, when I said it, and how I like exactly how I want them to do it. Right? It seems like if they were just robots, it would be so simple. But the reality is, it's not. Right? Kids
Right.
have
Well,
their
and even
own.
as a parent,
Even as an
as
adult, we're
as my kids are all adults now, I still feel that way.
yes, yes,
So
yeah.
it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away. Well, oh, we just need to find ways to like
Hmm.
see things from a different perspective. And I think reminding ourselves they're humans. They have their own will. They see things from a different lens, right?
Hmm.
So let's talk about like misbehavior. Why does it even happen? And the phrase that we hear a lot, misbehaviors, communication. And what does that actually mean? And go a little bit deeper in that.
Yeah. In fact, I'll even go further and say all behavior is communication. So when a kid is misbehaving, it means that something isn't regulated right with them. And so whether its boundaries are not clear enough, it could be they're tired, they're hungry, they are jealous, they are feeling isolated. It could be just a myriad of things. And it's our job as parents to be the detectives to decode, well, why is this happening? And then it's also important for us to give them better choices on how to express what's going on with them and practice and practice and practice with them. And then to also help them understand that, yeah, there are boundaries that you don't cross in society. There's certain things that maybe within our family that are firm rules, but there are going to be things at school that you don't cross this line. There are things in society, you don't cross this line. And so I think those are the three of the key things that we as parents have a responsibility to do. Understand why, give them options, and help them recognize those boundaries and understand how to deal with them.
Yeah, I like what you said, like that it's dysregulation. And I
Yeah.
know a lot about that because us as, adults, when we're dysregulated, it comes out in our tone
Mm-hmm.
and our attitude, right? We tend to be more disrespectful and rude and maybe
Yeah.
snappy and easily triggered when we are dysregulated. And as adults, we struggle regulating ourselves,
Yeah.
who we're mature, we're fully mature, our brains are fully developed, yet somehow we expect a 2-year-old to
Mm-hmm.
maturely communicate to you like, hey mom, I feel so disappointed you set this boundary and you're not letting me do what I want to do, so I'm just gonna be really upset about it. I mean, obviously a 2-year-old, there's no way they're
Right.
gonna do that, and it comes out in like a full blown, usually tantrum where they fall on the floor and they scream and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons, as we know, is because they don't have the skills. They don't
Right.
know that it's such a big, uncomfortable feeling. So it usually all comes back to either an unmet need, right?
Right.
Some basic needs like sleep and food, or they're just emotional unmet need, or they're just feeling yucky internally,
Right.
super
Maybe they're feeling sick.
yeah, super uncomfortable, or
Yeah.
like you said, jealous, or
Mm-hmm.
angry, or they feel like they don't matter, whatever it might be, and it comes out in their behavior, and it's the underneath, it's an uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah. And a big part of that too, when they're our little guys, is vocabulary. So they may recognize I'm not feeling right. Something's not right here, but I don't have the words or the vocabulary yet to be accurate in expressing what I'm feeling. I mean, even as adults, we struggle with finding the words to accurately describe what we're feeling. And so we're expecting these kids with just maybe 24, 36, 48 months on this earth. And we've had that in years and more. And we expect them to be able to do things that adults don't do well. So I think we really want to be sure that we're being realistic in our expectations. And then we're supporting them and we're setting the right example. A lot of times kids will, not all the time, but a lot of times, kids are mimicking behaviors that they're seeing from the adults around them. And so, so sometimes you need to sit down and really self-reflect too. And am I getting more upset than I need to because I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm feeling isolated, I'm stressed out. And so it's interesting that a lot of the things that stress us out are really in a child version, but they're the same things.
So
There's,
let's talk a little bit more about that. What kind of things would be stressful for a child, and how would that come out in their behavior?
yeah. So of course there's physical needs, just talk about, food, blah, 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 sleep. But then there's the social things as well. So we get stressed out. Let's say we're at work and there's somebody that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and they're just a jerk, and they try to make you look bad, or they're rude, or they talk to you in a demeaning way, and that will stress us out as well. Well, the kids have those same kind of things too, only usually it's their brother instead of a coworker. But it's those same kind of feelings that we are experiencing. So if we can look at it in that way and we recognize, okay, they're frustrated with their sibling, what's the core of that? And it's not just because they wouldn't give me the toy I wanted. Sometimes it's deeper because it's constant, or oftentimes, and trust me, as the oldest of 7, and I think anyone who has siblings growing up, our parents see us doing something and they get mad at us, but they didn't see the preamble as to why I am hitting my brother. And so I get in trouble for hitting when they probably, well, I won't say probably, sometimes, we're actually more egregious. And I've done everything. I've used all the tools that I have in my bucket. And remember, our little guys, their buckets are way smaller and they don't have as many tools. So once they've used all the tools in their bucket, they're going to resort to, all right, I'm just punching in the face.
Yeah, let's talk about that because my kids struggle with that.
Yeah.
My boys definitely struggle with that. Let's
Mhm.
say they're doing something and then their brother comes up and starts either taking their stuff or
Mhm.
annoying them,
Mhm.
based on their words. Probably because the brother is either bored or wants some connection. That's kind of like the
Mhm.
reason, right?
Yeah.
Underneath. Or they themselves are in a bad place internally. And usually what happens with us, even adults, when we're internally not in a good place, we just want to spill it out on everyone else.
Absolutely. And we
And
do.
and we
I
do,
mean, many
right?
times we do. We may not
Yeah.
be assaulting people, randomly,
Yeah.
but we do. And some adults do assault people
Yes.
randomly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we need to really, I think when we can take what they're feeling and try to put ourselves in that situation and understand what's going on, I think we're going to be able to handle it a lot better than just assuming this is what's going on.
Yeah.
There's a thing that it says when we think we know what someone else is feeling, we're wrong about 95% of the time.
Wow. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I really like that.
And that goes with the kids too,
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it does seem like they're doing it on purpose. And I will tell you, sometimes they are doing it on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because they are bored or because they've been putting up with this all week. Mom and dad haven't caught it. And I'm just, what do I have to lose? You know, at
Yeah.
least this is going to bring it to mom and dad's attention. Now, do they think of it in that line? No. But maybe if I'm making it a big enough deal, mom and dad have to address this. Even if I'm in trouble, at least they're going to talk to me about it. And that's kind of an inert thing. They're not totally going through that thought process, but it's a reflex thing of finally, what can I do?
Like a
I'm tired of this.
subconscious way.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. So let's do like a scenario. So one of my kids is playing calmly with his toys, and his brother comes
Hmm.
up to him and just like kicks his Legos that
Absolutely.
the other one builds.
Hmm.
And the one that was playing freaks out. He's like, "Stop!" And his brother
Hmm.
kicks it again and destroys the rest of it. Obviously, the one that was playing completely freaks out, loses it, and tries to attack the other one and hit him.
Sure.
And then they get into a fight right there.
Hmm.
And then I walk in and I'm like, whoa, 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 what's going on? Like I see two kids that are just fighting and hitting each other. And I obviously, like for me, I have to physically get in the middle of them and separate it because if I just say, yes, stop, they don't. At least my
Right.
kids don't. I mean, I do say stop, stop. And I will get in the middle and I have to literally hold them. And I said, this is not safe. I can't let you hit. I can't let you
Right.
hit. I won't let you hit. I see you're angry. You want to hurt your brother because you're so mad. I won't let you hit. My job is to keep you safe.
Hmm.
Okay. Let's decode a little bit. Like, why? Obviously, they hit because they felt out of control.
Hmm.
Yeah. They felt like their brother did this on purpose. So let's
Hmm.
decode a little bit. What is going on behind that? Because as a parent, you just want it to stop. And oftentimes, if we're internally struggling, we come in and we just freak out, scream at the kids,
Hmm.
separate them, and then everybody's just grumpy and in a bad mood for the rest of the day. So let's walk through that and find ways that parents can see things from a different lens and
Hmm.
give some tools to parents how to handle it in a better way.
Yeah. So there's something that's kind of going around. It's a phenomenon in school. It's not as politically charged as the title might suggest, but it's called restorative justice. And it's a process and it works really well in families as well. And I use it every day. in my classroom with my kids. So what happens is you've walked in, you see all of this going on, separate the boys. And so the first thing we need to do is just let them take a breath and calm down. Because if you're trying to talk to them while they're that charged, it's not sinking in, or they're going to misinterpret it like you're taking his side or whatever. So
And can we stop for a second? And the
yeah,
reason they do that is when someone is in their emotional or survival part of the brain,
yeah,
they get physical, especially in survival part of the brain, and the thinking brain shuts off. Which
absolutely it
the part
does.
of the brain is the one that helps us see other people's perspective. That part of the brain shuts off, and they literally only see their side of the story. They think that everyone else is at fault, and their side is like the correct one. That is what's going on, because when you try to talk to them, they're like, what happened? They're like, he did this, he made me. They do that because they literally cannot see the other person's perspective. That part of the brain that helps them do that is shut off in that time. Okay. So yes,
Absolutely. And that's one of the key issues with this process, is that it's really a waste of time. And what is that doing to your relationship with your kids if you're trying to force knowledge into them when they're not capable of receiving it?
yeah.
So
Sorry, I want to step in
yeah,
and say I really like that phrase. Someone said it. You're not teaching your toddler ABCs when they're throwing a tantrum, because nothing is going to register. Yet we try to teach logically and discipline or correct or whatever it is in the heat of the moment, pretty much when their brain is in a tantrum, and we think that it's going to help, but it's not. And the reason is because that part of the brain is shut off.
yeah. So our number one job, the first thing on that flow chart, is lower the temperature, the emotional temperature in the room. And let's face it, when we walk in and we see our boys, on verge of nuclear annihilation, right? We're charged as well. And so we need to get ourselves so that we're breathing, our breathing is regulated, and that we're able to say the right thing instead of just the anger. You can't do this, da, da, da. And so everybody in the room, including the adult, need to take a second. And there are things that you can do, and it just depends on your family dynamics and what works. I know some families that have very silly songs that they will start singing as they're calming down, or maybe they're doing some breathing, or maybe like maybe 5 minutes outside. And if they're fisticuffs, it might be supervised outside, but getting outside and getting some of that energy worked out. You know your kids, hopefully, and so you're going to know what are the things that you can do to, calm them down. The next thing, once they're calm, is you're going to pull both the boys together and say, okay, let's talk about what happened here. So I walked into the for me, classroom. I walked into the room, and you two were beating each other up, and that scared me. I was worried about our family getting hurt, and I worry about our family, not showing love to one another. And so I was worried, and I did some yelling and stuff so I could get you to stop. But I want to hear what you think happened. And the key is you're going to choose one child, and you know your family dynamics well enough to know who should go first. And generally, it's the child with the least regulation that will go first, that has the least ability to wait. So you go with them, and and you're going to say, I'm going to listen to Joey first. Mikey, I want you to listen to what Joey's saying, but you're not talking at all. When Joey's done, Joey can't talk, and you get a turn. And I want to hear exactly what you think happened, right? And they're having to listen to each other's story. And if someone jumps in, Mikey jumps in while Joey's talking, it's like, oh, Mikey, remember, I want to hear everything you have to say, but we'll wait till Joey's done, and then it's going to be your turn. And you might have to calmly reinforce that a few times, especially when this is a new process for your family. And then when Joey's done, you're going to say, okay, thank you. And you might even try to summarize what Joey said. So what I'm hearing is blah, blah, blah. Okay, Mikey, what happened? And it's Mikey's turn. And Joey's going to want to barge in. And so you're doing the same thing, reminding them, we're listening to Mikey's story. And then when Mikey's done, blah, blah, blah. All right. So and they're going to feel so much better once they've had a chance to tell their side and not be interrupted. Being heard is such a huge part of this process. So,
yeah, and I think just even thank you so much for saying that. Was so helpful. But even like having your sibling listening to your perspective, right? Because we know our story and our side of the story, but we don't know their side of the story and what they felt. And just having them ability to express their side of the story and to be heard by the parent and by the sibling that was involved, and giving them that space to do that, it is so valuable. Like you said, like the importance of being heard and being understood. And then like your job as a parent, like what do you say? Do you validate it? Like how do you validate their perspective? Like
because once you try to validate one side or the other, you're taking sides.
Okay.
So I'm just summarizing.
Okay.
Or I might even say, Mikey, but I would wait until both sides have had a chance to talk. And then I might say, yeah, Mikey, do you understand why Joey thought this? Now, it depends on the age. And so as they get older, maybe 3 or 4 is when they're going to have enough verbal things to say, do you understand what he's saying? This process is great with 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. I've used it, but it's very simple. You're not going, I see Mikey was crying when he was telling his side of the story. He's really sad. Do you see that your brother is sad? And so it's going to be a more basic conversation with the really younger kids. Once they hit 3 and 4, then you're able to talk about, and actually that's a key thing when we document how kids are doing in social emotional learning in school. Part of the things that we document, even at these early ages in my pre-K class that we're working on now, some of the things that we're watching for, are they able to see another person's point of view? And that's a show of growth. So we recognize when they're really young, no, they're not going to be able to see someone else's point of view, but they are going to be able to hear, that someone else has an opinion, someone else is sad, you're sad, how can we fix it? As they get older, then you can start asking, what are some other things we could have done instead? I can see that you were really mad about blah, blah, blah. But what are some other things that we could have done instead? Now, if you've taken some time, and I highly recommend this, I would do this at least once a week and make it a fun family time. And I would have a set time, whether it's Wednesday night or Saturday morning, doesn't matter. But I would have a set time where the whole family is coming together and we're talking about, how do we react when so-and-so, or when you feel like someone isn't listening to you? How do you react when you hear someone saying bad things about you? That's another trigger in the family, is they'll hear a sibling talking to a friend saying negative things, or even to mom saying negative things. And so when you take the time to have those conversations when everybody's calm, and you have maybe a fun treat, or you play some games around it. And if you look online, there are a lot of games that you can use to help kids understand different things. We do a lot of role playing, and the adult's always the bad guy. The improper kid. I've used puppets with them. Puppets are a lot of fun, and the little guys really dig it. And so if you have a puppet that's misbehaving, you're like, oh, is that okay? No. they get all involved. So if you can make it fun and non-judgmental, but we are practicing doing things. So we'll let them build a blocks or something, and I'll come through and kick it. oh no, what are you going to do? And they know it's a game, they know it's playing, but they're learning. And, it's practice that makes perfect, right? Or practice that makes better, honestly.
Yes, progress. Yes. I love
Yes.
that you said role playing and practice because I
Hmm.
know that with my kids, when we role play
Hmm.
about a certain scenario that, let's say, has been happening recently and coming up, when they're regulated, right? We have to do it when they're regulated and when they're internally in a good place because then their thinking brain is turned on and they're actually able to take in what
Right.
we're doing, right? I noticed that because oftentimes we're telling them what not to do, but we don't tell them what to do instead. And we're like,
Exactly.
don't hit your brother, don't do this, right? And like, I catch that myself too, because like I was raised that way. Like, I'm constantly telling them what not to do, but then I'm like, I'm not giving them the skills what to do instead. And
Right.
so finding a place, a time in your week, and if you have a super busy schedule, that's why you're not going to have
Hmm.
time for that. That's what's so important to have white space in your week. But finding a time like that where they're regulated and we're like, okay, this has been coming up. Like, we'll talk about it. Like, what do you think has been happening this week? That has been causing lots of tension. How do you think we can solve this problem and get them like involved in like brainstorming ideas? Because then they feel like they're part of it. And like,
Hmm.
and then role playing. I think that's so awesome because when we role play, we are so much more likely to remember it in the heat of the moment. Like, same thing for you. If
Exactly.
somebody's like, hey, here's a new computer program, like, I'll show you what to do, show it once, and then like you're on your own. You're like, what? Like, I don't know what to do. Versus if they walk you through, you're pressing the buttons and
Hmm.
then you do it 5 times, right? You walk through the process, you are so much more likely to remember it next time you need to use it.
Exactly. Exactly. Or if you're like me, you have to write everything down.
Yeah, me too. I'm the writer. I'm the
Oh,
person
me
like I
too.
write
Me
everything down.
too.
All my notes I have to write down.
Another thing that you can use this time for, and I'll tell you, if you are really um, good at making sure it's the same time every week, let's say. I mean, you could do it more often, less often, but it's very scheduled. It's on the calendar, and the kids will start saying, oh, it's our time for whatever you're going to call it. It's our family time. It's our practice time, or whatever you want to call it. But they get excited for it and they start looking toward it. And if they miss it, it's kind of like a sad deal. And so that's a fun thing. Another thing that you can use for this time in talking about practicing, but you could practice what to do if your friend tries to tell you to do something you shouldn't do. What's something you could do if you see a friend being mean to another child? What are some things that you can do? Or even, the scary grown-up things a little bit too. My big thing is if anybody tells you, don't tell your parents, what's the first thing you do? You tell your parents. And so, we practice those kinds of things. And so you can just bring a wide myriad of things that are in there, but you're making it fun. You're making it a game. You can put in some of the tools that we've practiced. I've put them in a hat. I put them in a shoe. I couldn't find anything. Oh, let's put it in the shoe. And so then they would pull out, it could either be a picture if your kid's really young, or it can be a word if they're starting to learn to read. And then that's their answer. That's how they're going to deal with that problem for this practice time. And I've even sometimes in some of my kindergarten classes, I've used that. It was a treasure chest, but it had, pictures and then the words underneath of, well, you can trade, you can wait your turn, you can set the timer, you can, all these different things. And so when there was a conflict, the kids got to where they would just go without me to the treasure box and pull something. In fact, they were looking for things. They were so excited to go to the treasure box. And they would pull it out, and they knew, okay, now we're going to trade, or we're going to wait 5 minutes. And so you give them physically those tools. They're seeing them as a physical thing to choose with. And that's another great way to help them work through it.
Thank you so much. Those are such good practical tools. I love it. I love it because it just like reminds me again, we haven't done a practice session in such a long time. And I really like the
Mm-hmm.
idea of doing it weekly because then
Mm-hmm.
they know, and just even like writing down on a piece of paper these common conflicts or struggles that let's say they deal with their brothers making an annoying noise and they're super bothered by it or whatever, like, because it happens in my house
Yeah.
constantly. I have a highly sensitive one that gets easily like annoyed if someone makes some noise or, like, or
Mhm.
tapping or something. Hey, Mama, if you're listening to this and this episode is helpful for you, would you do me a favor? Would you please screenshot it and tag me on social media and then send this episode to a friend? Another mama who does have little ones that have conflict between each other. And I would just really, really appreciate it. That would be so helpful for me. If you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with another mama. All right, let's get back to the episode. I wanted to circle back a little bit to why, when like we as a parent walk into it and it's easy for us to freak out, because aggression, for me especially, like to my brain, it's a threat. Right?
Mhm.
Like when we see aggression, kids aggression, or just any aggression, it's a threat to our brain, and our brain feels unsafe. And it is normal and common for our brain to want to protect. And that's why it comes out to, like, sometimes we freak out, right? Because our brain just wants to stop it and protect it. And so
Mhm.
just reminding ourselves and seeing it from a different lens and like telling myself, like, I got this, I'm safe. This is like, my kid is struggling and they need my help. Like,
Mhm.
and those are some affirmations that help us in the heat of the moment and not see it as much as a threat.
Right. And I think there were some of the key things that you said that really are important. It's that you're seeing it as a threat. A threat to what?
Safety,
Mm-hmm.
like, I physically, especially my kids are getting, I am like 4'11", so I'm not super tall. And so my son, who's 10 years old, like, he's like this high, like,
Right.
to me, and he's
Yeah.
bigger and he's physically strong.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for me to stop him when he's physically getting aggressive, it takes a lot, almost all of my physical strength to do it. And my
Right.
7-year-old also is getting, he's a normal 7-year-old. And so, like, yeah, my 4-year-old, I can easily stop him, but the other two, they're physically strong. And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, my brain sees it as a threat.
Right.
It feels unsafe. And
Right.
it just sees unsafe. And like I said, I was spanked as a kid, and I'm sure that like also plays a role into it. Right. So
Right. Um, yeah, I was hit with an extension cord multiple times on my back and legs. So I get there's a difference between spanking and then, in my words, assault. but but when we're talking about that, though, you're bringing feelings and emotions that it's not you're dredging them up, they're jumping up in your face up and down, right? And so, but it's more about your feelings, your reaction, your fear. Fear is a huge motivator in how quickly we react to something. And when we're making decisions in fear, that doesn't work well for us often.
yeah, because my story, my
Yeah.
internal story, if I like stop for a moment and be like, why am I reacting quick? I feel unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I? I'm afraid of my kids growing up to be abusive men. That's
Right.
my deep fear.
That's your thing.
That's my
Yeah.
thing. I'm like, I cannot have my sons, because I my husband is not abusive, but I
Mm-hmm.
know that there are many women in
Yeah.
my circles that I know of whose husbands
Mm-hmm.
are physically abusive, and
Mm-hmm.
they hurt them when they're not doing, because they want to control, right? When they're angry. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, my internal thoughts are right away like, they won't be able to control their anger and they're going to grow up to be abusive men. And so I
Mm-hmm.
have to stop it. Like, that is
Mm-hmm.
my internal thought
Right.
process. And so
Right.
that's why it feels extra unsafe
Mm-hmm.
for me. And so, like, changing that story and
Yeah.
shifting it, like, they're immature, they're struggling,
They're boys.
they're boys. And so, like, my job is to keep them safe and model, right? And stay
Mm-hmm.
regulated myself.
Mm-hmm.
And like I teach my moms, if you're internally in a bad place, if you're constantly stressed out, if you're constantly overwhelmed, and if you don't take care of yourself, it is 1,000 times harder to come alongside your kids like that and
Right.
see them as needing help and support because your needs are unmet. If you're bitter and resentful because you haven't had any time to recharge, you will just see it as like a
Hmm.
threat. And it's almost, I don't want to say impossible, but like so much harder to do all these things that we're talking about and see it from that type of lens.
Right. And I think too, if some of those feelings are becoming so overwhelming that it's hard for you to, you know, look at the kids as kids or whatever, because you've got these fears of what they're going to be as adults. You've got years before they're going to be adults, right? It's not anything that's going to happen right away. So if that's really getting in the way, having a good friend, or having, even better yet, a therapist that they can help you work through those feelings, because we know you need to be calmed down and see the situation for what it actually is. It's two brothers fighting, right? And while it's not exactly what we want, it's not that unusual, honestly. It may not be what we want, but it's something that it's an opportunity to teach. And so when we are able to get our mindset where it needs to be so that we are able to teach rather than react, we're going to be so much more effective. And so if you walk in and you let that fear, you're not really going to teach them, you're going to react. And you're going to be so much more effective when you're calm and you're able to explain things in a better way and help them remember what the tools are that you've worked with. But anyway, we want to go back to those tools that we've been practicing and that we've been working on. And those tools work for us as well. So when we're practicing them with the kids, we need to retrain our brain too to be using those same tools. And the reality is seeing it for what it really is. Brothers are going to fight. More brothers fight than not. And it doesn't mean that they're going to hate each other as adults. You know, my kids growing up, yeah, they had fights and they had arguments, and they're so close right now. They plan time to get together, and so it's a wonderful thing. So I'd try to get away from the fear of what might be. Worrying about that and having a fear of that is really a waste of emotion in a way. And so it's not that you can just, oh, I'm not going to worry about that anymore. It's something you've got to work through, but you've also got to recognize that that's going to have an effect on how you interpret a situation with your kids, you know? And
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So the two steps that you mentioned
mhm,
was, let's recap a little bit.
yeah,
So the first one was to just have like calm down,
yes.
de-escalate, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Have separate if need be, if it's
Hmm.
really physical. And then when everyone's kind of de-escalated, bring them together.
Hmm.
Whoever is more dysregulated goes first, and you have them tell their perspective, what happened,
Exactly.
and have the other one listen, and then
Hmm.
take turns. Then what? What is the next step?
Then we're going to talk about, I understand how you felt. I understand that you were mad about this. I understand that you were sick and tired of that. What are some other ways that we could handle that? And let them come up with some of the ideas. So whether it's something that you've practiced and they're pulling from that, or they might be thinking of some new ideas. Some of their ideas are not going to be appropriate, right? Well, I did it. I punched him in the face. That is a choice. Yes, that is a choice. You know, is that the best choice, do you think? And sometimes they will say things like that, either to be silly or to, um, kind of get your goat, see if they can rile you up.
Or
Don't let
because
them.
they're still dysregulated
Exactly.
too much, and
Exactly.
they literally only see that as the only solution
Yeah.
to the
And they
issue.
may, they may. And then having a sense of humor about it too, and being able to laugh at some of the things and with them, and so, and sometimes they could be like totally crazy things like, well, I could fly to Miami, Yeah, you could. I don't know where you're going to get the money, but and just laugh with them instead of saying, "Oh, well, that's not appropriate." Another great question is, what would happen if you did that? When they give an answer to that. So if you did that, what would happen next? And then they're starting to think, and that's executive functioning. That is something that is really key in their early years, to be able to give them opportunities to think about, well, if I did this, how would that go? And think of that tool as they become teenagers, as they grow into adults, that they're able to process down the road instead of being very reactive. They're thinking, oh, if I did this, how many lives would be better as adults if we could just stop and do that before we make a
Yes.
decision?
Oh my gosh. So many adults, like if you think about it, so many marriage issues
Yeah.
are because of this, because
Mm-hmm.
people don't know how to regulate their emotions, when to walk away and take a break. They don't know how to manage their anger in a healthy
Mm-hmm.
way. And they
Mm-hmm.
do hurtful things that are so
Yeah.
destructive and then are abusive, right? And the
Yeah.
reason is because it was never modeled or taught to them.
Right. Right.
And
two, I think getting to a place where eventually it's not going to happen right away. This is going to take, if you start early and you're working on it through life, it's not going to happen when they're 3 or 4. It's going to take years, honestly, of raising a person. But when they're able to listen and look at, well, they're doing this because they're hurting. My husband did this because he's an introvert and I'm an extrovert. So it's very hard for me. And this is a true story. Next week is our 44th wedding anniversary. So we've managed through. But it's sometimes I don't get how he thinks, because he thinks in an introverted way.
also, he's a male.
And he's a male.
He thinks differently.
And it took me some time to realize too, because it really takes time to really assess somebody, and it takes years to really get to know somebody. But when I met him, his mom was friends with my grandma. He's the youngest of 9 and I'm the oldest. Do you see what I'm saying? And finally hit me after about 5 or 6 years of marriage. He's actually a generation older than me, even though we're only 10 months apart in age. And so a lot of his attitudes go with that generation. And once I realized that, I could process it differently. And we were able to get to 44. But I think it's the same thing with our kids. If they can learn, wow, Joey's hungry, Joey's sad, his friend said he's not his friend anymore, or there's a lot of reasons for kids to do these things. And when they're able to really look at someone else and say, wow, he's really hurting. And I know that wasn't nice to hear or to go through, but I can feel bad for my sibling. I can feel bad for that mean kid in school, where
have empathy.
And have that empathy, and then trust yourself to act on it.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you mentioned that it takes lots of practice for them to start implementing these things. So here's the thing. We have automatic reactions that happen when our brain is under threat or under stress. It just happens. Like same thing for you as an adult, same thing for your kids. And so I really like this analogy I heard on another parenting podcast. And she said the reason we need to practice again and again outside of the moment, or just in general, so many times until you see the fruit, right? Is because it's literally like teaching our brain a new language. It's like, okay, it's like me teaching you Chinese right now and telling you twice and be like, hey, think of this when you're under stress and communicate in Chinese, right?
Exactly.
You're not gonna, right? You're gonna, especially if they've been doing things one way. Let's say you have a 10-year-old, they have been doing things one way for 10 years. And now they have to rewire their brain and respond differently. And it takes so much practice. And on top of that, their brains are immature.
Exactly.
And I just noticed, because I started, gentle parenting with my kids about 2.5 years ago. And that's when I was introduced to the whole world. I just didn't even know it existed before that
Mm-hmm.
because I've only read books. Oh my gosh, I'm just embarrassed to say, but it was all about like super strict discipline, punish
Yeah.
them enough and hard enough for them not to
Mm-hmm.
want to ever do it again. It was just
Mm-hmm.
completely
Tough love
opposite.
approach.
Yes, completely opposite of what I do now. And so now it's all about connection, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I got rid of all those books. I actually put them in a pile and let my kids, when they're angry, to tear all those like papers. It's like those are the books that we put over there. And so, yes, it's like a whole new language that they have to learn and to be able to practice it enough times for them to be able to actually implement it in the heat of the moment when things are tense, when you are triggered, when
Mm-hmm.
your brain does feel threatened, when your brother like destroys all your things that you've been building for 10 minutes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the reason why it's so hard to like you don't see the, I guess, results as quickly if you teach them one time, to
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Well, and we know as educators, we know that there are children who will learn faster, maybe after 3, 4, 5 episodes or practice sessions or whatever. But there are other kids that it literally will take 100 times to get a math concept or a reading skill or whatever. It will literally take 100 repetitions,
Yeah.
and that's within the realm of normal.
Yeah. It's same thing. It's like you don't teach them to read once and then expect them to just do well. Like you sit there and some kids
Exactly.
take longer than others. It's like a really,
Mm-hmm.
really good analogy. And I can tell you what, having 3 boys, and obviously my youngest one was like 2.5 when I first started
Mm-hmm.
learning this and implementing with him. And I tell you what, he is my, easiest now. He was the most challenging. That's why I actually went to counseling to get help, because he was the most challenging out of all my kids, like the amount of energy he was draining out of me. But now he's my easiest one. He, in the sense of that, he's able to communicate really well what's going on. And he's able to ask for help before he physically gets aggressive, like
Mm-hmm.
quicker than his older siblings. He's able to travel the curve of the emotional kind of like wave that comes quicker than his brothers. And like he's the one that like regulates so much quicker when co-regulates with me. Like if I'm doing deep breathing and he like, comes in
Mm-hmm.
because he was younger when I started it. And so
Yeah.
and I'd say with my older one, it's been harder because he's been doing things differently for 7.5 years, and now we're relearning things. So it's like
Yeah.
with the younger one, it's like I was teaching him. With the older two, it's like I'm reteaching them. So
Yeah. And there's the reality that change is stressful. Even change for the better is stressful. So we're moving from an apartment to a nice big, 3,500 square foot home, right? Definitely for the better, right? But it's still very stressful to go through that process to get to that better place. And it's the same with everything that we do. Anytime we institute change in our routines, in our family, whatever, even though it may be for the better, it's still going to be stressful.
yeah, definitely. And I know that too. Like we are planning on moving this summer, and I know that
So are we.
that's gonna be big. It's gonna be big.
Well, we're sizing down because we're at that stage.
We need to size up because
We
we're
can trade.
expanding. Yes.
Yep.
Oh, well, before we go, I wanted to touch on a little bit about how to handle with kids when they're saying hurtful and nasty things to each other. So, in the
Yeah.
sense of like my boys, when they're upset with their brother, it's like you're a poopy butthole, and it's like all the things with boys, right?
Right.
That they say, and it's all always related to like poop and butt and
Of
stuff for
course.
some reason. I
Of
don't,
course, because they're boys.
because they're boys, right?
And they just that's just part of it.
Yes. And
And
so one of them
recognizing the
said, yeah.
difference
Yeah,
is
one of them will
important.
say it, yes, and then
Yeah.
the other one will get upset, and then we'll
Mm-hmm.
start hurting them, and or
Mm-hmm.
saying nasty things, or physically start hurting
Mm-hmm.
them. So it's like, okay, let's so they say it also because they are in a bad place internally for
Exactly.
whatever reason they're saying it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of similar to like, how do you, okay, as a parent, I'm like, okay, please stop. That's not okay. Like, please, I'm like, you can either stop or you're going to have to go to a different room. You can't be saying this to your brother.
How's that
And
working
so,
for you?
not great.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm bringing this out, because I'm like, help me out here. Give me a solution or
Right.
like a tool to handle this, because I'm a little
Mm-hmm.
bit at a loss with this one.
Right. Anytime for me, anytime that I can take a situation and turn it into something that we're laughing together is a huge benefit. So if you hear them saying those kind of things to each other, join in, except you're going to say amazing things like, you are the kindest kid ever, and they're like, what? Like, okay, your turn. And so like you're joining in like it's a game. And then they'll start like, mom's lost her mind, and that's okay. Or you can say, you smell really good. And so you say it in the tone that they're saying poopy head or whatever. I know that, oh gosh, this has probably been 3 years ago. I had a class, I was teaching kindergarten, and I had a class with some kids that were just very colorful in their insults and stuff. And so, we started, and their language, even in kindergarten, man, they're dropping F-bombs, they're using the N-word. It was just tough. And so we started making kind of a competition. So I would say, oh, and I'm old. I go back to some of the old cartoons, with Snagglepuss and some of those things. And so I'd say, oh, Jumpin' Jehoshaphat, or, some of these really crazy old things. If you really want to have fun, if you go to YouTube and you do Colonel Potter's curse words from MASH, so, well, that's a bunch of monkey muffins or whatever, horse hockey. I don't believe that, whatever. And they thought it was hysterical that we were using these crazy, goofy words, instead of these hurtful, awful words. And then they started on their own, like coming up with their own, like, that's a bunch of cheese puffs.
So like changing the atmosphere and the
Yes.
energy by shifting it into
Yeah.
being silly instead of.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to be definitely a challenge for me, because I am on the stricter end. That's part of
Mm-hmm.
my personality, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, things just have to be right, and they have to be just so. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely going to be something I will have to. It will challenge me out of my comfort zone, something that does not naturally come to me. I'm
Yeah.
not a naturally like. I'm more like calm, grounded, like peaceful, loving, cuddly, but
Mm-hmm.
not like, oh, a fun, silly mom. I'm not, that's not
Right.
like naturally what I'm, you know, you know, towards. And so this is a really great idea. I'm gonna have to really try it,
Yeah.
because definitely something won't come
If you
naturally.
need help while you're getting dressed in the morning, go to YouTube, listen to Colonel Potter's curse words every day. So they're starting to come in your head. It's that practice thing and repetition, and it will come. And the kids, they just look at you like you've got three heads. My mom, when we used to argue, of course we argued. It's part of life, and it's really not that much to really worry about, honestly. They're learning how to negotiate. They're learning how to stand up for themselves. You just want to make sure it doesn't become hurtful
Mhm.
emotionally or physically. So we would get in and get started. And my mom would come in and she would sing this song called Love at Home. And she would just start, and she thought she was Doris Day. She'd like do her Doris Day voice and come in singing this Love at Home song. And we had to stop and just laugh at her, because she'd come in like she was on stage and be all silly. And that's really a fun memory of mine, of growing up. And so you're building memories, and with those memories, you're building relationships.
Yes, you're encouraging me to find the silly side of me and bring that out with my kids.
Yeah.
Whenever I do that, they love it. Like I do it rarely, but whenever it does happen, they love
Hmm.
like the silly
Yeah.
things. I like make silly, funny faces with them, or like they burp and we, go along with
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
Just because like it's so normal for boys to be immature at this stage in their life,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And it's fun. I mean, find the fun in it. It's really an engaging stage of life. It's it's so easy to get them to break down and just laugh and have fun. Whereas when they're teenagers, like, wow, really, mom, whatever they're doing. Man, this is such a fun stage in life. I remember it was the 10 Rings or whatever. There was that movie. It's a Marvel movie, but one of the characters, whenever things would get awkward or scary, she would just out of the blue start singing Hotel California. And it had nothing but people would be like, what? And then, once you bump them off of that rail of anger or whatever, then other things can happen. So yeah, just do weirdo things.
oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing all this. There's so much great advice. Like, I love the practical aspect of things. This is like what I lean towards, and it's so many helpful tools. So what is like one thing you want our listeners to remember before we walk away today? What is like one thing that you want them to really remember about childhood behavior?
That it's nothing to be afraid of, and that it's an opportunity to teach and to learn. It's not any being frustrated isn't going to work, but it's an exciting opportunity. Yay, I get to teach this. So,
Yes, thank you so much. So much. Where can our listeners find you and connect with you?
sure. Well, I have my own podcast. It's called Imperfect Heroes: Insights into Parenting. And you can find that anywhere that you're getting podcasts. I also have a website with my company, and that's Little Hearts Academy USA. And we do group coaching. I have some one-on-one. We have other things that are available right now. In fact, I'm actually at the end of this run with a free workshop on parent-teacher conversations. We know that conferences are coming up. And so that's a free for any of your listeners to get in on. It's about an hour long, but it gives you some great insight on how to talk to teachers and what they're looking for. So those are basically it. I'm on Instagram with Imperfect Heroes podcast. I'm on Facebook with Little Hearts Academy USA.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all the tools and the advice and the steps that you've given us that we can implement as moms.
Thank you. It's fun being here. I always love these conversations.
Hey mama, here are the takeaways. When kids are misbehaving, there's always an underlying reason. Number 2, kids hit because they don't have the positive coping skills to handle hard situations. Number 3, when kids are emotionally charged, they are not capable of learning skills. Number 4, once everyone is calm, bring the kids together and listen to both sides of the story without judgment or interruptions. Number 5, summarize what you heard from each child. Number 6, role-playing when your child is regulated is one of the best ways to teach your kids how to handle challenging situations. And number 7, learning coping skills is like a new language. It takes a lot of practice to implement them under stress.
Hey mama, do you find yourself snapping over the smallest things, like spilled milk or constant whining, then feeling horrible afterwards? If you're tired of losing your temper and you want to show up with more patience, I have something for you. It's a free training called How to Be More Patient with Your Kids so you're not screaming over spilled milk. Inside, I'll walk you through 10 simple things you can start doing today to become a calmer, more Christ-like mom, even on the hard days. To get it for free, just leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and send a screenshot to hello@emotionallyhealthylegacy.com. Or if you'd rather skip the wait, you can grab it right now for just $27. The link is in the show notes. Let's help you become the peaceful, patient mom your kids need.